Ah, dearest Simmers, can you feel it? The scent of spring mingles with something far more tantalizing. The season has arrived, and Fairwicke awakens once more. Among the fluttering gowns and polished boots, one arrival stands above the rest. Lady Helena Ashcombe, royal bride-to-be. Under the watchful eye of Lord Sheffield, her presence has ignited whispers. Has the Earl come to Fairwicke solely for duty, or does something more compelling tie him to this town? Another family has drawn attention, the Trevains. Nathaniel, Viscount Killow, has swiftly earned his reputation as a gentleman of charm and poise, though whispers suggest his family hopes to see him engaged by season's end. Yet adventure may prove more enticing than matrimony. His younger brother James arrives with boundless energy, leaving his long-suffering tutor, Mr. Everard, in a perpetual state of exasperation. His enthusiasm for art and storytelling sets him apart, but will the Tom find his antics endearing or scandalous? And speaking of scandal, Fairwicke's fashion set has a new reason to gossip. Madame Esme's modiste shop, situated elegantly on Peach Row, boasts Parisian craftsmanship and a flair for innovation. None wasted time flocking to her doors, and Lady Victoria Bellingham herself is rumoured to debut a dazzling creation at Saturday's Ravensford Ball. Yet beyond the season's shimmer, one must not forget the Harrows. Installed in Lady Agatha Everstone's former townhouse, their arrival was anything but subtle. Daylight carriages, an abundance of trunks, and an air of determined grandeur. Arabella Harrow, the eldest daughter, stepped into Fairwicke with the confidence of one who expects to be seen, her gown dazzling, her gaze unwavering. Still, navigating Fairwicke's waters is no small task, and with three daughters poised for society, even wealth may not guarantee smooth sailing. For now, dear Simmer, the pieces are set, the season unfolds, and the observer shall watch.
Dear Diary, the shop is mine, a modest space on Peach Row, tucked between the bustle, but mine nonetheless. The front room, just spacious enough for fittings and displays, will require clever arrangements to appear grander than it is. The back is less forgiving. A bed shoved between crates of fabric, ledges stacked atop a wobbly table. No comforts, no privacy. But I did not come to Fairwicke for luxury. I came to build something lasting. Fortune has already shown kindness. My neighbour, Laurie Barnett, a bookseller, warm and cheerful, visited today. I recounted a curious moment from the morning's appointments, one he seemed to enjoy far more than I expected. Lady Isabel Morcott's daughters arrived in high spirits. Amelia and Celine fluttered over fabric swatches, their excitement infectious. But Honoria stood apart, calm, composed, too quiet. Nearby, whispers drifted, the lingering scandal that shadowed her name. I had thought such cruel talk would fade, but hearing it today stung, a reminder of how tightly society clings to its judgments. Yet Honoria gave no sign of hurt. When Amelia suggested a powder blue gown, she simply nodded. "It's kind, Amelia. Perhaps I should wear that." No bitterness, no protest, just quiet acceptance, a shield against the murmurs around her. The design for Honoria's gown is already forming in my mind. Powder blue remains, but lace shall speak boldly. Elegance stitched into every line, a quiet triumph against judgment. Amelia's gown, delicate white with matching trim, will complement her sister. A vision of grace, tailored for the tongue's brightest debutante. Mr. Barnett, hearing my account, handed me a blank journal. At my questioning look, he said, "You have a way with observation. Why let moments like that slip away?" Perhaps he is right. Tomorrow, fittings begin for Lady Clementia and Lady Victoria. An entirely different challenge. But tonight, I will write, here in my quiet shop, and I will not let Honoria's story, or any other, fade into silence.
Dearest Simmers, the curtains have drawn back, and this season's players are stepping into the light. Some to dazzle, some to scheme, all to be seen. The Queen's Spring Assembly unfolded in full splendor, with Fairwicke's finest gathered beneath a sky of gilded tradition and whispered ambition. While the ballroom shimmered with satin and smiles, one nearly scandalous misstep was quietly intercepted. Miss Arabella Harrow, ever bold in her aspirations, was seen nearing the prince's private chambers. Only the swift, razor-sharp courtesy of Lady Anna Bellingham spared the tongue a morning scandal. Her guidance, firm, polite, and devastatingly precise, led Arabella elsewhere, but the whispers have only grown louder. Amidst the elegance, a new tradition emerged. Queen Wilhelmina unveiled her jewels of the season, not in diamonds, but in debutantes. Lady Victoria Bellingham, Lady Ellie Kingsbrook, Miss Amelia Morcott, and Miss Violet Harrow were each named for their grace, wit, and presence. A celebration of promise over pedigree, and proof that substance, this season, will shine brighter than station. Away from the bustle, a gentler story unfolded. Lady Helena Ashcombe, a woman long spoken of as a future royal bride, was seen in tender conversation with young Octavia Fitzwilliam, laughter between them. Genuine warmth. The tongue, of course, has questions, but none the Queen herself seems inclined to answer. Fairwicke's season has begun, with scandal averted, honours bestowed, and eyes sharpened. The ink is fresh, the story's just beginning. And, rest assured, from the first curtsy to the final scandal, Fairwicke is watching. And so am I.
Dear Diary, it's strange how an ordinary moment can shift, how something once dismissed can return with startling clarity. Earlier this week, Arabella Harrow swept into the shop with her usual flair. "I require something worthy of a princess," she declared, barely pausing for breath. I thought little of it at the time. Arabella's sense of grandeur is well known, and her mother does little to temper it. But today, I read the Fairwicke Observer. A near scandal at the Queen's Spring Assembly, vague in detail, but unmistakably Arabella. Was she merely being vain? Or was she preparing for something far bolder? I tell myself not to dwell, but then I think of Lady Helena Ashcombe. I met her not long ago. She carries herself with quiet grace, kindness that lingers beyond pleasantries. I admired her, not for her title, but for her steadiness. The thought of Arabella disrupting her future unsettles me more than I care to admit. Violet Harrow, thankfully, is nothing like her sister. Sweet, unassuming, and, if I may say, deserving of her place among the Queen's chosen jewels. Ellie Kingsbrook, however, remains a mystery. She arrived for her fitting with no enthusiasm. There's a restlessness in her, as if she's meant for something beyond all this. And then, Agatha and Joanna. Joanna Knowles, Lady Victoria's maid, was all poise and charm. Agatha, my dear assistant, was not. She dropped an entire bundle of fabric at Joanna's feet, cheeks aflame. Joanna helped her gather it, smiling, not unkindly, but with something softer. When their hands touched, Agatha froze. Joanna didn't. They lingered, just for a moment, but something passed between them. A beginning, perhaps. And yet, even that warmth couldn't shield me from what came next. Victor Ashcroft, in Fairwicke. I saw him across the street. Before he could see me, I turned and fled. My heart hasn't settled since. He shouldn't be here. I told myself I left on my own terms, that my father wouldn't send someone after me, but now, I'm not so sure. For the first time since arriving in Fairwicke, I feel the past reaching for me, and I cannot, will not, let it take hold.
Dearest Simmers, with the Ravensford Ball fast approaching, this first week of the season has already offered a rich bounty for those attuned to the shifting tempo. Among the week's most telling motifs, the lingering presence of Lord Oliver Drayton at both the Bellingham and Kingsbrook households. A gentleman is expected to court the Queen's shining jewels, yes, but twice upon the same threshold suggests more than duty. Elsewhere, a floral overture from Lord Julian Kingsbrook surprised the Ravensford drawing room. No longer just Percy's companion, he arrived bouquet in hand, a deviation one no observer could miss. Viscount Killow, too, appears in fine form. His attentions divided between Miss Morcott and Miss Harrow, with whispered preferences forming amid the laughter. But not all introductions were arranged with such care. Miss Arabella Harrow, regal, radiant, received callers of dubious distinction, a modest parade of those more eager for fortune than for love. And yet, it was Lord Claybridge who offered the week's most surprising note. His call upon Miss Honoria Morcott, not her sister, was as unexpected as it was carefully observed. The young lady was unprepared, the Earl made to wait. And when a man known for his discretion deviates from expectation, society leans in. Then came the promenade, sun-dappled, serene. All so it began. Lady Helena Ashcombe, flanked by Lady Anna Bellingham, Lady Clementia, and the ever-charming Lady Isabel, presented a vision of restraint and elegance. Across the lawn, the Prince, silent, poised, rode with Lord Drayton and the dashing Felix Morcott. No words passed between Prince and betrothed, a silence so loud even the lilies seemed to lean closer. And into that silence rode Miss Arabella Harrow, alone, unintroduced. She steered her mare alongside the Prince with such commanding certainty one could almost believe propriety had been rewritten in her favour. The Prince's reply? Cool, clipped. Miss Harrow, this is hardly the place. And just like that, he returned to his companions, the matter dismissed. Miss Harrow, ever composed, withdrew with the grace of one who knows retreat can still be spectacle. Lady Helena's expression faltered, for only a moment. Speculation bloomed like daffodils, and the tarn held its breath. The cracks in propriety are beginning to show, and with the Ravensford Ball near at hand, Fairwicke appears poised not for harmony, but for crescendo.
Dear Diary, at the start of the week, something remarkable happened. Something that feels, even now, like the beginning of a turning point. Lady Helena Ashcombe came to the shop. Not simply for a gown, but the gown. The one she will wear when she becomes a princess. Though we've spoken before, I remain struck by her presence. Her grace is not performative, nor her kindness rehearsed. It is simply who she is. And now, she has entrusted me with the task of creating the gown that will mark one of the most important days of her life. The weight of that trust is immense, but so too is the honour. I promised her something beyond beauty, something unforgettable. And already, in quiet moments, I find myself sketching. Lace, silk, silhouettes that might capture her essence. Today, the shop was alive with preparations for the Ravensford Ball. Among my visitors was Lady Ellie Kingsbrook. When she first came to me, she was polite but distant. Today, she was radiant, laughing, twirling, her eyes bright, as Agatha adjusted the hemline. She didn't say what had changed. She didn't need to. It was written across her face. Joy, anticipation, something new blooming quietly within her. After she left, I returned to my sketches, only to be interrupted once more.
this time by Mr. Barnett. He's visited Peach Row before, always kind, always courteous. But today he brought a parcel, a book wrapped in parchment, Rousseau. He said he thought I might enjoy it. And then, with no flourish, no pretense, he said, "I overheard some ladies in the shop today. They mentioned your commission for Lady Helena's gown. I know how important that is for you. Congratulations, Miss Dupont. You deserve it." It was not the gift that moved me, but the understanding. The quiet recognition of what this moment means to me. As he left, I held the book a little too tightly. Something unfamiliar stirred in my chest. It is too soon to name it. But I cannot ignore the kindness of his gesture, nor the way he sees me, not as the modiste, not as the fiction I've built, but as the person beneath it all. I wonder if he is the kind of man who could love that person. Time, I think, will tell.
Dearest Simmers, glittering chandeliers bathe the Ravensford ballroom in golden light, illuminating silk gowns and gleaming cravats, every movement a shimmer of wealth and careful intention. The first true spectacle of the season brought with it all the allure of whispered promises, measured glances, and the unspoken thrill of possibility. And speaking of sparkle, none gleamed more brightly than Her Majesty's chosen treasures. Let us call them not ornaments, but facets of brilliance. Lady Victoria Bellingham, the Queen's diamond. Lady Ellie Kingsbrook, the radiant ruby. Miss Amelia Morcott, the poised emerald. And Miss Violet Harrow, the brilliant sapphire. One hopes each young lady finds the designation flattering, though surely none would argue with the Queen's judgment. Her Majesty was in attendance herself, a rare and telling appearance. The Queen does not grace such affairs without intent. And what greater opportunity than this, for alliances to take root, for reputations to sharpen into legend. Lady Victoria, ever luminous, divided her attention between Lord Julian Kingsbrook and Lord Oliver Drayton. Tradition favours the former, but the latter, well, charm has rewritten many rules before. Lady Ellie, as radiant as ever, shared in Lord Drayton's regard, and carried herself with the quiet grace of one who has never needed it. As for Miss Morcott and Miss Harrow, our emerald and sapphire, Viscount Killow appeared on both their dance cards. No surprise there, they moved through the room with the kind of elegance that inspires indecision. But while the Queen's jewels glittered across the floor, one arrival drew attention like a lodestar. Prince Antoine of Montcroy. Yes, he comes for the royal ridding, but why so early? Charming, effortless, elusive, Prince Antoine mingles with all and promises nothing. A diplomat or something else entirely. Whatever his reasons, the timing is impeccable. 2 princes, 1 ball, and a queen whose gaze sees more than most dare suspect. The season has only just begun, and already the pieces are shifting across Fairwicke's grand chessboard.
Dear Diary, what an ordeal and a triumph to prepare the Queen's shining jewels for the Ravensford ball. Lady Victoria, Lady Ellie, Miss Amelia, Miss Violet, each gown a labour of love, each stitch a quiet promise. To hear whispers of their elegance and see admiration bloom across the ballroom, it was deeply gratifying. I admit, I chuckled when I read the Observer's latest flourish. Diamond, ruby, emerald, sapphire. A poetic touch, though I wonder what Her Majesty might think of her jewels being outshone in name. Still, there's something enchanting about the image. Young women glittering like gemstones beneath the chandeliers. Since the ball, the shop has been abuzz. Prince Antoine of Montcroy is on everyone's lips, from debutantes twirling ribbons to matrons adjusting their daughters' futures. Even in Mr. Barnett's bookstore, I overheard speculation between the shelves. Why arrive so early for a wedding? No one knows. But no one minds, either. In his presence, they are all too willing to be charmed. Another name on everyone's tongue is Lord Oliver Drayton. It seems he spent his years abroad not merely indulging wanderlust, but building a nectar-making venture with none other than Victor Ashcroft. Their partnership has earned them acclaim, and I'm relieved to know Victor's return is tied to business, not to me. Still, caution remains my companion. Lady Ellie, radiant as the ruby, seems thoroughly captivated by Lord Oliver. And Mr. Barnett, Laurie, his visits have become a quiet ritual. 5 minutes, sometimes less, but always sincere. He listens without pretense, speaks with warmth and wit, and reminds me that decency still exists in a world so often ruled by calculation. Victor's presence still unsettles me, though I now know he isn't here for me. Something about him stirs the unease I wish would fade. The Ravensford ball and my commission for Lady Helena's gown mark a turning point, a step into Fairwicke's future, a place I might truly call home, if I remain vigilant. The season promises triumphs and trials alike, but perhaps, with care, even I might find my place among the shifting tides.
Dearest Simmers, it is often said that the loveliest days of spring inspire the grandest gatherings, and Lady Alice Kingsbrook did not disappoint. The Kingsbrook garden party, hosted in honour of the Harrows, was nothing short of theatrical. Among the season's brighter threads, the gentle bloom of Lady Ellie Kingsbrook and Lord Oliver Drayton. They've graduated from speculation to certainty, with smiles, glances, and unmistakable ease. Just as charming and refreshingly less performed are Lady Victoria and Lord Julian, two souls content in quiet rhythm, settled into a content companionship born of years of familiarity. But it was the Earl of Claybridge and Miss Honoria Morcott who stirred quiet delight. Their conversation, books, business, the shape of a well-crafted argument, felt unlike anything else on the lawn. No flirting, no flancing, just recognition. And when she, quite by accident, admitted her fondness for dance, he offered his hand without hesitation. They waltzed across the grass, laughter trailing them. It was the sort of moment the season so rarely offers, unscripted and unmistakably true. And yet all eyes, as ever, circled back to the crown, Lady Helena and Prince William. Once distant, now closer, their walks unhurried and words few, but felt. Where once the prince brooded, he now listens, attends. No grand declaration. Arabella Harrow, however, subscribes to a different philosophy. Impatiently she descended upon the prince with all the subtlety of a cannonade. In her mind, perhaps, this was destiny. But before she could begin her campaign, Lady Helena intervened. "Miss Arabella, what a pleasure," she said, and with one radiant smile steered the conversation like a seasoned diplomat. Within moments, Arabella was cordially dismissed. It was breathtakingly polite and utterly decisive. Lady Helena made no scene, she needed none, she commanded. And as Prince William turned toward her with the faintest curve of a smile, one could begin to see the match they could make, if only they let it. The blossoms at the Kingsbrook garden party were beautiful, but only one knew how to bloom without spectacle.
Dear Diary, until now, I've lived my life in Fairwicke, inside careful seams, every word stitched tight, every gesture deliberate. And yet, today, with one name whispered, the whole thread began to fray. It was a quiet, sunlit afternoon. Mr. Barnett, Laurie, had come to visit again and stayed longer than he needed to. It's becoming a habit, because there's something gently shifting between us. Nothing we have named yet, but no less real. It was comfortable between us. Then the shop bell rang, sharply, decisively, and I turned to face the newcomer who had broken the peace of the afternoon and nearly gasped in surprise. Victor, in my shop. He walked in as if through a memory, eyes fixed on mine like a man seeing a ghost. Then he spoke into the quiet. "Emily, is that you?" Laurie looked at Victor, then back at me, clearly confused. I needed to head this off. "Monsieur," I said, smiling at Victor, as if he were a perfect stranger. "You must be mistaken. I am Madame Dupont." "Emily, I do not know this name." Victor looked through me as if trying to discern my meaning. I kept the polite smile pasted on my face. Sensing some tension, Laurie, of course, turned to me and asked, "Is everything all right, Miss Dupont?" "Oui," I replied. "A simple misunderstanding." I turned back to Victor, a pleasant smile in place. "Perhaps you confused me with someone from your past?" He hesitated, and then lied. "Yes, I must be." Laurie nodded politely, satisfied, and the moment slipped back into our earlier rhythm. The bell jingled again as Victor left. I knew it was not the end. I would have to answer for it later. Tonight, Victor waits at the corner, just as he used to. Back when we were young, and the lives we lived weren't the ones we would have chosen. We once knew each other so well, and knew each other's dreams. And then, I left, and I wonder, as I sit here writing this, does he hate me for leaving? Will he understand why I had to? And why is he here now, not in Fairwicke, but in my life? Whatever answer he brings, it waits just ahead. And I must go meet it.
Dearest Simmers, the lawns of Fairwicke thundered with hoves and fine silks yesterday as society gathered for Prince William's equestrian race. Racing against Lord Trevor Drayton and Mr. Felix Morcott, His Royal Highness claimed victory by a breath, his reputation as a master horseman reaffirmed. The triumph's true highlight, however, came not on the field, but in the moment Lady Helena Ashcombe stepped forward to present the Prince's ribbon. Clad in ivory and deep rose, her elegance drew soft murmurs from the crowd. But when the Prince's stallion shied, startled by the flick of a parasol, Lady Helena faltered. Only for a moment, just long enough for those who knew to feel the past stir beneath her composure. It was the Prince who steadied her, a hand at her arm, words none but she could hear, a kiss upon her hand, formal perhaps, but felt. And one wonders, was the day's victory truly his fastest lap, or the quiet accord now growing between a prince and his future bride? Elsewhere, the Queen's jewels gleamed in their own right. Lady Victoria and Lord Julian, diamond and confident, seemed utterly content in their familiar rhythm. Lady Ellie, our radiant ruby, shared her own graceful warmth with Lord Drayton, their ease drawing more than one knowing glance. Among those still unclaimed, attention rested on the emerald and the sapphire. Miss Amelia Morcott charmed the crowd with her signature poise, and perhaps briefly even caught the eye of Prince Antoine of Montcroix. Whether that gaze lingers remains to be seen, and Miss Violet Harrow, always sincere, always composed, stood quietly luminous beside Lord Nathaniel Trevane. Their connection remains an open question, but the chapter feels far from closed. Which brings us, with great delicacy, to Lord Thomas Sheffield and Miss Honoria Morcott. One begs forgiveness for unwrapping their joy too early, but it seems the pair are engaged. Their restraint, likely in deference to Lady Helena's triumph, is admirable, but the light of love cannot be dimmed forever. Miss Morcott, once shadowed by scandal, now stands resolute, her worth evident in the gaze of a man who sees her clearly. And together, they promise not just partnership, but permanence. So ends another chapter in the grand tapestry of Fairwicke, rich with triumph, woven with intrigue, and always threaded with secrets, waiting to gallop into the light.
Dear Diary, the night is colder than I expected. I step into the alley, the air sharp against my skin. I hear it, a blackbird's call, carried through the stillness, like a thread drawn from memory. It was always ours, that sound, a secret signal woven between stolen moments, back before the world knew our names, before I turned 18. Victor and I would meet beneath the trees once the village slept, We spoke in dreams, of cities wider than our world, of lives built rather than inherited. His voice full of ambition, mine full of stories I hadn't yet lived, until he kissed me, and in that moment I saw not the boy I whispered futures with, but the man I might never be free from. So I ran, not that night, but soon after. I left only a note, the worst kind of parting gift from a writer who couldn't find the right words. A farewell, a confession, a coward's escape. Now, the blackbird calls again, and once again I follow. He's standing beneath the trees, half in shadow, just as he was all those years ago. And, for one fragile moment, I forget the time between. I move toward him, deliberate, calm, though my heart is anything but. And then, I'm in his arms. The kiss comes like breath returning. Too full, too fast, too much. And then, we break.
You left, and you never told me why.
I gave you a note.
That wasn't the truth. That was cowardice.
I'm Esme now.
No, Esme is a mask. You can lie to Fairwicke, but you can't lie to me.
You don't know me anymore.
Whose fault is that?
Mine. And I'd do it again.
I saw you. With him. Does he even know who you are?
He knows enough.
Does he know Emily? Or just Esme?
You will not speak to him.
Is that what you think of me? That I'd ruin you?
I don't answer. I can't. The blackbird calls again. But this time it doesn't sound like memory. It sounds like a reckoning. Victor says nothing more. He turns and walks away. And I let him. Because this time, he's the one who's leaving. And for the first time, I feel what it means to be left behind.
Fairwicke, it's your world now. Go swim in it.